Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you all are doing very well today. I wanted to come on here. I was actually working on this earlier today, and I ran into some obstacles. So I had to go take care of the obstacles. So I finally am able to sit down in front of my computer and do this episode of this podcast, Table Flippers Podcast. This is your host, Robert A. Enos, your favorite apostle. And no, the A doesn't stand for apostle. It stands for awesome. Anyways, let me get into this because this is actually very sad to me. What I'm about to talk to is very sad. And I hope to not make a very long episode, but a somewhat short for me at least, episode. But I don't know where this is going to go with me because I am very passionate about this right now. And this is actually heartbreaking to me, okay? And I'm going to talk about the California race for the governor's race. I just was like, which one? And none of them sounded good until I said governor's race. So we're going to talk about that for just briefly. And the reason I'm going to talk about this is because what I've been seeing, and a lot of people in my circle have been complaining about this and talking about this, is, okay, we have Steve Hilton and we have Chad Bianco who are running, and Republicans, conservative Republicans, and they're running. And at least for a long while there, they were both doing very, very, very good. Steve Hilton, I believe, was always out front, but Chad Bianco was a close second. Then after that whole fiasco with Swalwell, it seemed like some of the Democrats, and we know that the Democrats did this on purpose, but nonetheless, some of the Democrats started creeping up in the polls. And I'm going to talk about the polls in just a moment. But what's been happening of late, from what I understand, Steve Hilton put out a letter, and maybe it was a video as well, but put out put something out that basically said, hey, Chad, Chad at this point is not in second place anymore, just behind Steve Hilton. He's in third or fourth place. But nonetheless, he says, hey, Chad, instead of splitting the vote, why don't you just graciously get out of the race? And I'll be honest with you, ladies and gentlemen, I want to be honest with you. I agree with that. Why stay in the race if being in the race is just going to split the vote and hurt us as conservatives? Don't hurt us as conservatives, but let's get out of the race, somebody, one of them, and support the other so that the vote isn't split. And then we end up with two Democrats at the top of the ticket. And then come November, we end up with a Democrat, because Democrats have destroyed California. And I'll be honest with you, if these polls are correct, and I know they can pretty much, the way they do these polls, they may not be correct at all. We've seen these types of things before, typically from the left, but none the left. I wish it was none the left, but nonetheless, these could be completely false. But we have to kind of take it with a grain of salt and understand, okay, it's maybe not 100% correct, but we have to be concerned. Are we at least in the ballpark? And that means that the Republicans really have to step up their game. And that means Republicans and conservatives really have to think strategically, not only about all races, but this race. We need California back in the red, ladies and gentlemen, back to being right, ladies and gentlemen. So I want to read this to you because what happened is after Steve Hilton put out that, I believe it was a letter. If I saw it correctly, and I'm understanding the way this is playing out, an open letter, but nonetheless, it doesn't matter. He put out a thing saying, Chad, you need to step down, you need to resign, you need to, walk away from this and have your supporters support me, still Steve Hilton. So I don't think that set very well with Chad Bianco. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I do understand that in that sense. Nobody wants to be treated like or expected to be, in this sense, a loser. Okay, and I'm not saying Chad Bianco, the person, is a loser, but he's not winning at the polls, at least, in this sense, right? It doesn't look like Chad Bianco has much of a chance to really be our next governor. Now, before I go on, let me tell you real briefly, my metamorphosis between, Chad Bianco and Steve Hilton. Early on, when I first started hearing about Chad Bianco, and we went to a rally and a meet and greet, got to meet him, shake his hand, hear him, I really like Chad Bianco. Really like Chad Bianco a lot. And I said way back then, this is my guy. Okay? And through different means and such, locally, we've been trying to, a group that I'm a part of, been trying to get Chad Bianco to come out and talk to this group. And he wouldn't, or couldn't, whatever. But this has been months and months and months and months and months. Okay? So he couldn't make it, or wouldn't make it, whatever you want to call it. Okay? Just, it didn't line up. But then there were some things that started coming out, and I started seeing in Chad Bianco, and maybe it was just the way his campaign was being run. Maybe it was, but it looked, I'm just going to be honest here, it looked kind of like it was a character issue. Now, it could have been just the way, his handlers, his campaign managers, whatever. Maybe it was just some negative things or weak things in the way his campaign was run. Okay, so I can take it with a grain of salt, and I can give a lot of grace. And then, but slowly I started hearing more and more and more from Steve Hilton and what he says and where he's come from, his policies, and I started to really like him. But I was still a Chad Bianco guy. And then anyways, some other things took place. But the big thing was on Mother's Day, just a week and a half ago, I think it was, Mother's Day, Steve Hilton and the entire golden ticket. That's Steve Hilton, Gloria Romero, Herb Morgan, and Michael Gates came to our church. That's where we hosted it. Okay, it wasn't a church event necessarily. We opened up the doors and hosted it in that sense, but it was hosted by the local Republican groups, and they made themselves available on Mother's Day. All four of them. They not only were part of a rally that was about, if I remember correctly, about 2 hours long, and then they stayed for dinner. And we were able to talk to them and shake their hands and get to know them more on a personal basis, and that was at least 2 hours. So they were with us, close to 4 hours, if not more, and great people. So they were able to make it out, all four of them, and they're kind of teaming up. They're running together. They're a team because they want to work together. They have plans to work together. They have a strategy and a formula to make California great. And, like I said, I really liked what Chad Bianco had said, and a lot of the things even that he is saying right now, I really like. But when a candidate, or in this case, four candidates that are working together, made themselves available on Mother's Day, that their families were willing to sacrifice that day, they themselves were willing to sacrifice, and they did it, and they made it happen. Now, suddenly, I really shifted. I'll be honest with you, ladies and gentlemen. I shifted from being 100% Chad to now 100% Steve Hilton. Are there still some things that I'm concerned about? Yes, with both of them. But what really sealed the deal, what it really clinched it, wasn't just sitting down, because I understand politics and I understand people in general. They're going to say what they need to say to win you over to their side, whether they're a politician or not, generally speaking, but especially politicians. So again, I was taking everything, whether it be positive or negative, with a grain of salt, gave lots of grace. But here's what really cinched it for me. After Steve Hilton put out that letter or put that information, put that out there that he was asking Chad Bianco to step aside so that the Bianco supporters could now support Hilton, so that we can actually get a conservative into Sacramento, into the governorship of California. So Chad Bianco started putting some things out there to kind of counter that. And one of them was a video. I saw, and I watched it several times. And the reason I watched it several times, not because I didn't think, I watched it several times the first time around, because I wanted to make sure this wasn't some goofball AI. And let me tell you, if it's AI, it is the best AI I've ever seen, okay? But I don't think it's AI at all. Not at all. I'm a 99.9999999% sure that it's not AI or CGI or any other I. It was the real deal. And it was Chad Bianco going on there talking about Steve Hilton and telling everybody, he put it out there. This is out there. Put it out there that Steve Hilton's ran out of money in, I believe he said on that video in January, or even maybe like last month. There was some things that he threw out there that but nonetheless. And that right now, the only money that he really has coming in is coming from Democrats and Democrat super PACs. That's what he says, and he's getting all this money in, and that he's just a Democrat, and all of this. I had a hard time swallowing that, because I'm like, I don't think so. I really don't think so, because he is, now how conservative he actually is. I don't know him on a personal basis that well, but he's been in Republican circles for many, many, many years. He was a commentator on Fox News. Now, I know Fox News is far more left-leaning than I like, but it's still one of the most conservative news outlets, major news outlets out there. So for him being on there and supporting, I'm talking about Steve Hilton now, supporting Republicans and Republican and conservative ideas and ideology and people, it was hard for me to stomach this, hearing this from Chad Bianco. But again, I gave him the benefit of the doubt. And he even says in this video, Google it. This is all easy to find. Go ahead and Google it. So guess what I did? I Googled it. So I not only went to Google, because that's what he said, Google. So I'm assuming at that point that he got his information off of Google. So I wanted to Google it. So when I went to Google and I just typed in, is Steve Hilton's campaign being funded by Democrats and Democrat Super PAC? And it said no. That's a lie that's being floated out there. So I said, okay, let me go to Perplexity. Now, I've talked about Perplexity. I'm not saying that any one of these is like the best, or that you should go by just any one, whether it be Google, Perplexity, Chat GPT, or Grok. Pull your information from a lot of different sources just to make sure that you're getting it right. So I went to Perplexity. As a matter of fact, I have it on my screen just behind my camera. And this is how I asked the question. I said, Chad Bianco has accused Steve Hilton of having his campaign funded by Democrats and Democrat super PACs. Is this true? Simple question, but to the point, and I made it clear. Okay, where this information is coming from, Democrats, Democrat super PACs, Steve Hilton's campaign, is this true? Now, I'm going to read to you word for word from Perplexity, okay? And this aligns up with Google, just so you know. This aligns up with Google. It wasn't just Perplexity, it wasn't just Google, but both of them agree and give me the same base, maybe not word for word, but the same basic truth and reality, facts, if you will. It says there is no evidence that Steve Hilton's campaign is funded by Democrats or Democrat super PACs. The claim comes from Republican rival Chad Bianco, who accused Hilton in May of 2026, that's this month, of being funded by Gavin Newsom and the left. So according to Perplexity, somewhere, not necessarily in that video I watched, but somewhere, I'm just telling you what Perplexity is saying, that Chad Bianco has gone so far, or his campaign has gone so far as to say that it's Gavin Newsom and the left is funding Steve Hilton's campaign. So it says it's being funded by Gavin Newsom and the left to split the Republican vote. However, campaign finance reports show Hilton raised his money from Republican sources. So what Perplexity does is it searches the internet to try to get down to the truth, the facts. I'm not saying it's 100% foolproof because it's a program. It's a machine, if you will. Anyways, however, campaign finance reports show Hilton raised his money from Republican sources. So basically what this means, let me unravel this for you. What this means, if Perplexity is correct, and I say if Perplexity is correct, and if Google is correct, because they both agreed with one another, then Chad Bianco, if, like I said, I don't want to call this man a liar, okay, because maybe there's some information that he has that the rest of us don't have. But if so, I would like him to produce it, because I don't want to support somebody who's lying to us, basically in essence cheating, and is really a Democrat in disguise that's going to end up destroying this state even more than what it is. I want the best, But if Perplexity is correct, if Google is correct, then Chad Bianco is lying to us. And this is the reason why I'm so heartbroken over this, is because, we expect that from the left. We expect that from Democrats. We expect that from liberals. Or they call themselves progressives. Like they're progressing in their wickedness, their evil, and their lying and their deceit. So I guess they're progressives if you actually look at that and see that as a good thing. So we expect that from them. But what I don't expect at all is that from conservatives. Especially conservatives who claim to be Christian of one level, church, sect, denomination, or another. And so if Perplexity is correct, then Chad Bianco he's really the one splitting the vote, which in my opinion, whether he's lying or not, he's splitting the vote, because Hilton is still doing much better according to the polls. Now, again, polls can be askew. We know that. But according to the polls, according to what we do see, Steve Hilton is way out there in front of Bianco. So asking Bianco, now maybe, if it was me, I'm not so sure I would make it a public thing. Maybe send it to him privately, or send somebody that I can trust to him privately and say, I think it's time to resign, dude. But nonetheless, it was done the way it was done, and it is what it is. Whether we like it or not, it's there. And the truth is, Chad Bianco should be stepping down and telling his supporters, thank you for the support. I'll run again. And I kind of hope he does. I hope he regroups, figures some things out, and then runs again. But this go around, he's not going to make it. So be the bigger man, step aside and tell your supporters, thank you, but now support Steve Hilton so we don't end up with something or someone as bad or maybe worse than Newsom. I see, I can't stomach that. Anyways, that's called character. Let me finish this. So according to this is key facts about Hilton's fundraising. And this is, talking about Cal Matters, a site or information. Anyways, total raise. Now, this is Steve Hilton. Steve Hilton's total raise from July 2025 to December 2025 was $4.1 million. It says total raise through April of 2026 is $4.4 million. So from December 2025 to April 2026, he was able to raise another, if I'm reading this correctly, $300,000. Certainly not chump change. Not as much as he raised, from July 2025 to December 2025, but $300,000, that's not chump change. And it says he's the leading Republican fundraiser. Yes, and it says, I don't know why in the amount it says yes, but he's the leading Republican fundraiser. And the second one, who's not a Republican, is Tom Steyer, but Tom Steyer is a billionaire who's funding, for the most part, his own campaign. So he's raised, at least according to this, as of April 2026, last month, $4.4 million. That's Steve Hilton, okay? And the primary donor type, okay, so it tells us who the primary donor type is. Conservative Republican donors. That's what it says. Conservatives, Republicans are donating to Steve Hilton's campaign, not Democrats, and certainly not Democrat super PACs. It goes on to say, Hilton is a conservative television commentator running as a Republican for California governor. The only candidate outspending him is Democratic billionaire Tom Steyer, who has self-funded $28 million of his own money into the race. So, ladies and gentlemen, also look at that. Now, I'm not against people funding their own campaigns. That's fine. That's your campaign. You fund it. But when you're talking about Steve Hilton raising, and I'm assuming spending, in the neighborhood of $4.5 million compared to Tom Steyer at $28 million of his own money, that tells me that Tom Steyer does not have the pull that his videos and his campaign wants you to think he has. He doesn't have the support. If he has to support himself, and if he has to spend Steve Hilton by, what is that? 5 times, about 5 times, almost 6 times more, just to get to the point that he's at. I'm just going to be honest with you, ladies and gentlemen. This goes for Democrats. This goes for Republicans, progressives. It goes for everybody. If you have to outspend your opponent, who's on the other side of the aisle, okay, but your opponent by 6 times just to be in the, up there, somewhat close, still behind him, but somewhat close, then that tells you he's not as strong as a candidate as many people would like to think, because, well, he has the money to make himself look good. And if he has to look good just by how much of his own money he's spending, and people aren't donating, at least on the level that they're donating to Steve Hilton is still the better candidate all the way around. And just what he's receiving from his donors should tell you that. Okay. So, Mr. Chad Bianco, I really do appreciate so many things about you, but it really is time to hang up your hat as far as this race is concerned. Go back to the chalkboard, as they would say, and honestly, with some people that are really going to be honest with you, resign and tell your people, go support Steve Hilton. I'm going to regroup, so that then in, 4 years, I'm running again, or whatever it is, and you can run again. Because I really would like to see you run. I really like to hear you better, but there's some things that need to be polished about you. I'm just going to leave it at that, okay? So let me finish this. Bianco's accusation, it goes on to say, appears to be campaign rhetoric responding to Hilton, urging him to drop out to avoid splitting the GOP vote. So that's why it seems like Bianco is getting so animated about this, and even saying some things that let me put it this way. I don't want to call the man a liar, but I'm not going to lie. It looks like a lie, sounds like a lie. And he hasn't produced any facts. There's no proof. He hasn't produced any proof. I mean, I don't know about you, but if I was running and that's something I was trying to run on to smear my opponent, even if it was whatever, I would have the proof. Look, I got the document right here. I pulled this right off the whatever website. I pulled this right off, his own site. I pulled this off of whatever. Here's the proof. But he didn't do that. It was just rhetoric. It was just talk. So, and I'm very concerned. I'll be honest with you. I'm very concerned about this on a lot of levels. One, conservatives should not be doing that to other conservatives. Just shouldn't be happening unless you got proof. Like if you have a conservative, supposed conservative, they're not really conservative if they're lying, but if one of your conservative running mates is lying and you need him out of there because he's basing everything on lies, then prove it. Prove it. And if you can't prove it, just as bad as the first guy. So, and that's assuming that Steve Hilton did lie. I don't think he did. Anyways. And I don't want to call Chad Bianco a liar, but it certainly is not looking good for him, even to the point that really concerns me is now it seems if Steve Hilton can prove that Chad Bianco lied about him, this is a court. This needs to be settled in court because that's slander. That's libel. It's just not good. All right. Especially when you're looking, we expect the progressives to do that. We expect the liberals to do that. We expect Democrats to do that. But when it's from your own side and your own people, and I know there's tension, they're running against each other, but they're running on should be on the same team. I saw a little meme, I think it was yesterday, where it looked like Hilton was in a race and Bianco was running up to him with a baton, like a relay race. And Bianco is about to put the baton in Hilton's hand so Hilton can run. I'm telling you, ladies and gentlemen, it's time for Bianco to put the baton in Hilton's hands so that we can get a conservative in there. All right? A conservative. Let me go on. So after all of that was the first part on perplexity. Again, Google lined up with it. When I looked at Google, I asked it this question. So I went back to perplexity. Hey, perplexity. Who is the California governor race front runner? What is the standing of each candidate? I wanted to see kind of the poll numbers and such. Now, again, take this with a grain of salt. This is why I say when you're talking about polls and these types of things, you have to take it with a grain of salt. However, at the same time, you got to take it a little bit serious because if these numbers and such are anywhere in the ballpark, it's like, okay, the Democrats are going to want to show that their guy is leading, which should push us conservatives to work even harder to put him above. So according to this, it's the California governor primary election. It says first place. I don't even know where Perplexity got this. Polymarket. I think this says view on Polymarket. So I don't know. It shows that Xavier Becerra, I think that's how you pronounce his last name, just crept up 11% and now is out front of Steve Hilton, who is down by 8%, according to this. So Becerra is supposed to be out front, Steve Hilton second, Tom Steyer third, Chad Bianco fourth, and then Katie Porter way in the back. So, again, I don't know if this is true, but at least gives us some numbers that we should really be concerned about so that we can fight even harder. All right? It says the front runners in the 2026 California governor race is Xavier Becerra, a Democrat. And I've been listening to him just a little bit. I have to turn him off off after a while because it just sickens me because I'm like, this guy is worse than Newsom. Anyways, Steve Hilton, Republican, who's second. He's tied for the lead. Oh, I'm sorry. So these two are tied for the lead. Javier Becerra and Steve Hilton tied at 18%. Okay, they would get 18% of the vote. So if we were to go to the polls right now to decide who's going to be the front runners, the two that we vote for in November, it would be Becerra and Hilton at 18%. Okay, now again, take this with a grain of salt. In the most recent poll, okay, so 18% for both of them in the most recent poll. Prediction markets show Becerra with a slightly higher probability of finishing first at 48.5%. Compared to Hilton at 22.5, I don't know. That doesn't make sense to me. But nonetheless, it doesn't really matter. Just as in the poll, it's like this. Javier Becerra, Steve Hilton, second. Chad Bianco, third. Tom Steyer, fourth. Katie Porter and the rest of them all the way down the line. Let's see. What else is on here? Because I don't... Oh. Yeah, so according to this, Xavier Becerra at 48.5%, Steve Hilton at 22.5%, Tom Steyer at 13%, Chad Bianco at 2.95%. Oh, that's the chance of finishing first. That's the chance of finishing first. It says why this matters. California uses the top two primary system, so the candidates with the most votes advance to November. The fragmented Democratic field has allowed two Republicans, Hilton and Bianco, to consistently poll high, but Becerra's 15-point surge since March puts a Democrat in the top two for the first time. The primary is June 2nd, 2026, just weeks away. Now, I was trying to make sense of the way they put these percentages and numbers, but it wasn't until I got to this last little piece that it actually told me, oh, okay, of all the, the supporters, Becerra is at 18%, Hilton is at 18%, Chad Bianco in third at 14%, 4 points behind Hilton, and then Steyer at 12%. So it still looks pretty good for Steve Hilton, but could you imagine if Bianco pulled out and sent his followers, his supporters, to support Hilton? And let's assume for just a moment all of them would. Now, we know that that's not a reality. Some wouldn't, but let's say all of them would. That would mean that Steve Hilton would have about 30, if I'm reading this, 30% of the overall support would go to Hilton, where Becerra would only be at 18%. This is why this is so heartbreaking to me, because there's going to, if something doesn't change, if something doesn't break, if hearts don't change, we're going to have this battle between Bianco and Hilton that's going to split it even more. And we're going to end up with a candidate worse than Newsom as governor. And this is heartbreaking to me, because if you guys have been really watching and paying attention, we can't afford that. And I'm not, when I say afford, I'm not even talking about with our pocketbooks. I'm talking about morally. The Democrat Party has no real morals at all. They pick the most perverted, gross things and then support that. We have the strangest laws, the highest taxes, the highest gas because of the taxes. Everything's a mess in California directly because of the Democrats. We're bleeding people to other states like there's no tomorrow. Abortion is rampant, and in California, they will pay for other people from outside of the state abortions. All they have to do is show up here. I mean, it's gross and it's sick, and it all is at the Democrats. The Democrats are responsible for all of it. High prices, high gas, abortion rates out of control, murder of babies out of control, LGBT, BLM, Antifa, you name it. If it's perverted, if it's disgusting, if it's wrong, the Democrats are for it. We cannot put up with another 4 years of Democrat control in California. We are losing our state more and more and more and more. We need a true conservative in there. Now, somebody would say, well, Steve Hilton's not a true conservative. Okay, I'm not even going to argue that. He's the closest thing to a conservative that can actually win. Like I've already stated, there's a lot of things about Chad Bianco I like. And early on, I was Chad Bianco all the way. But I also smart enough, I want to hear both sides. I want to hear Hilton. I want to hear these different one. I don't care about the Democrats. I know what they're about. Perversion, sick, disgusting perversion. But once I heard about Hilton, and not only that, it wasn't just hearing Hilton. It was watching how Chad Bianco, it just seems like, I don't know how to explain this other than, I was watching a video, okay, a little video clip. And it was somebody in a mini mart, right? And I guess I don't know what was going on. All I know is they were yelling and screaming at the person behind the counter. And there was one of those glass things up. It was probably around COVID or just after COVID. You know, it was a plexiglass thing to keep people's germs from them. And she was smacking on this, yelling and screaming at the top of her lungs. So the security guard walks over there and tries to calm her down. She wouldn't calm down. She was yelling at the security guard, yelling at the guy behind the counter. And he finally says, okay, you've got to leave. And he didn't actually like manhandle her, but he formed a block kind of between, you know, he was there and put her, this woman losing her mind, between him and the door, and he just kept slowly walking towards the door so that eventually the only place she would be able to go is outside. And it was working until she came up upon a display case. Okay, there was a display case. I don't know what it was. It looks like maybe chips or ding-dongs and, you know, Twinkies and stuff like that. And she just grabs it and throws it on the ground. Then she jumps over to another display case, grabs it and throws it on the ground, kicks some things around, grabs another display case. And so from the point where she was first freaking out at the counter to the point that she finally got out of the door, she just started thrashing and destroying the place, yelling louder. And then they finally made her outside, and I don't know what she did outside, but she wasn't inside making a fuss anymore, thank God. That's what this reminds me of. And again, I find this very difficult because I like Chad Bianco. I like the things that he says. And I do think that someday he will make a great governor for California. But what I've been watching, it gives me the sense of somebody that, you know, like say Hilton puts out this letter and then Bianco just loses his mind and starts screaming. And then it's like, okay, we got to get this guy outside. We got to get him out of the race. Just like that one, we got to get her outside. And on his way out, now he's thrashing the place, calling Hilton names, spreading these, again, I'm really reluctant to say lies, but there's no proof. So these rumors, I'll call them rumors, ladies and gentlemen, these terrible rumors and this terrible, you know, information, if you will, that hasn't been proven. And according to Perplexity and Google, I can't find it. So unproven. It's like he's grabbing these things and just trying to, you know, take out and make a point on his way out. Because I believe at this point, if these polls are anywhere, and I've heard some of the Bianco supporters saying, we know how polls are. You can, and I agree, you can. And these polls are wrong. Chad Bianco's way out ahead. I keep hearing things like that. Then prove it. Don't just say it. Don't just throw out things that can mess with people's minds and their vote, and then we end up with a Democrat. Prove it. Because I'll be honest with you, I don't want to support anybody that's based on lies, that can't tell the truth, and all of this stuff, whether that be Bianco, Hilton, or anybody else. I want to follow the guy that has the greatest amount of character and can tell the truth, lives the truth, and walks out the truth. And I'll be honest with you, at least right now, from what I've seen, just what I've seen, it seems like and appears to be Steve Hilton, that guy. Again, it's politics. I understand that. So I give a lot of grace in that area, if you will. But even that grace runs out when things don't line up. And these things, the accusations come out that cannot be proven or are not being proven. Prove it or shut up. But either way, I hate to say it, but Mr. Bianco, you're not going to be our next governor. I would like to sit here and say, I am so wrong on this. But without proof of what you are asserting, what you are saying, Steve Hilton is still out ahead, way ahead of you, Mr. Bianco. So it just seems to me that it would be for all of California's good. See, and this is another way. You have somebody running for governor of California who's not putting Californians first, but themselves. I mean, think about it. I want you to think about it, ladies and gentlemen. So am I trying to build Hilton up as like this super anointed Messiah figure for California? No. I just am looking at this as honestly as I possibly can. Okay? He's a Republican, very conservative in a lot of his views, most of his views. He's a heck of a lot better than any Democrats running. And he's the only Republican in the race that stands a chance of winning. I would like to think that any other Republican or conservative-minded person would get out of the race and tell all of his followers or her followers to get behind Hilton so that we can take this state back. And then just regroup for the next go-around. Because I'll be honest with you, if in 4 or 8 years or whatever it is, for California, if Bianco ran again, I'm going to take him very, very seriously. I'm going to look at him very, very seriously. And if he has the character to line up with the position that we want for him, not just governor, but the position morally, ethically, and such, if he has that character, he's got my vote. He's got my vote. But right now, we have to have a strategy. Right now, we got to put aside our pride, our stubbornness, and say, what's going to be best for California? And I'm just going to be honest with you, ladies and gentlemen. In my mind, in my heart, Steve Hilton right now will be the best for California. So anyways, I just want you to think about that. I'm not trying to knock anybody necessarily. I'm just trying to bring this. I'm trying to unravel all of this stuff so we can have the best decisions on the best information with the best heart. And I believe that right now, just looking at it completely, not just one-sided or one area, I believe Steve Hilton is the best. So God bless you. I hope you really do your research. And please, if I want you to go on Grok, ChatGPT, Google, or any other site like that or anything, and try to find out, is Chad Bianco telling the truth? And maybe, I don't know, maybe it's just a little bit harder to find, or maybe I'm not asking it correctly. And if you get down to it and you find out that Chad Bianco really is telling the truth, please shoot me off an email or something right away. Right away. Don't wait until after November, but shoot it off to me right away. I will come back on here and I'll say, ladies and gentlemen, I was wrong. Let's fix this. I will do my best to, and I will apologize because I want the best for California. This isn't about me. I'm not running. I want the best. So if I'm wrong, if the way I asked Perplexity or Perplexity is wrong, or I asked it wrong, or Google, I want to make it right. So please send that to me if you ever find that information. But honestly, I don't think you will, because my wife did the exact same thing. And we asked it several different ways, and it all came up the same. Anyways, God bless you. Go vote. Either way, even if you're going to be You're like, well, I'm going to vote. Vote. Just go vote. Especially conservatives, especially Christians. Go vote. And please do your best to vote strategically. God bless.
Cable flippers is flipping awesome.